What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another video. We're through week 1 football, so it's peak overreaction season right now. I don't think most people have just completely changed their outlook on players, but I can promise you that some people are panicking right now on certain players, so definitely time to take advantage. We're going to go over 10 players I think we should be trading for or away this video. I've got 14 more on the website, plus I have a model that's going to list a boatload more at each position that over or underperformed in week 1. I built a new trade model this offseason that not only looks at who's overperforming and underperforming, but also takes into account the strength of the offense, how much competition each player has, like how good they actually are. So you can see all those predictions each week, along with my full detailed report outlining the most valuable players at every single position, and then trending up once we have at least 2 weeks of data. All the website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. If you want access to all of that for free, if you have signed up this season for Underdog, you already have access to that. You can check that out. You can check out the rankings as well. If you have not signed up yet for Underdog, do that. Use promo code FFA, make a minimum $10 deposit. Following morning, I'll email you login information to the website, or you can just get in season or all in through the website. So a ton of different ways you can gain access, whichever way works for you, do that one. So who are we trading for this week? Running back, we'll start off with. Not as many running backs, for there's more wide receivers this week, but Jonathan Taylor, 100%. He was the only running back across the league with 100% of the running back touches, 100% of the running back expected fantasy points on offense, but he was 29th in half PPR points per game, even scoring a touchdown because he had 0 targets. But as will be a theme with pretty much everyone on this list, maybe there's a few players who's not a theme for, volume. Volume was an issue in the NFL this week, a very unique problem to week 1. 43 plays. The Colts ran 43 plays. The lowest volume offense in the NFL last season ran 58.5 plays per game. So at absolute worst, the Colts are going to run at least 15 more plays per game this season. They will likely run 20 or more plays per game, more than they did in week 1 each week. Moving forward, that is at least 7.5 more touches for Jonathan Taylor. Again, 16 touches on 43 total plays. That's absolutely insane. He's going to have a monster workload. It's just the plays. So you can extend this into Pittman. We're not going to talk about Pittman in this video. I did include Pittman on the trade targets on the website. It was just kind of unique for the Colts because they hit on 2 monster touchdowns, which basically made those drives, they gained all those yards, but there were just 2 plays. There were 2 plays going to, let's be honest, secondary wide receivers. It wasn't Pittman. It wasn't JT. It wasn't even AD Mitchell. Downs wasn't playing. Like, these were secondary players that were just hitting for very long touchdowns. And the Texans did a really good job late in the game of killing the clock and not allowing the Colts to get the ball back. So a unique game for the Colts. Not unique on the week because it happened to a lot of teams, but 43 plays, you're going to want to target the studs. On the Colts, you can't target Anthony Richardson because even on 43 plays, he still did really, really well. But I would say Pittman and Jonathan Taylor should be 2 you're looking to go after. But JT over Pittman just because higher-end running backs are more valuable. Duo on the Bears. DeAndre Swift and Keenan Allen. Bears only ran 53 plays, but Swift had 84% of the running back expected fantasy points on the Bears, and then only 5 wide receivers had more expected fantasy points than Keenan Allen. So we had a good amount of volume and high quality volume going to these 2 players. They combined for 9.9 half PPR points. Not on average. They combined for that many points. A unique game for the Bears as well. Not only was it the first start for Caleb Williams, looked very, very shaky in that start, but we had defensive touchdowns for the Bears. We had them trailing, but then all of a sudden you have these defensive touchdowns, you have these turnovers, you have Will Levis on the other side just completely falling apart. And the game script just kind of completely changed to where they should have been a trailing script. We should have seen, more volume. I mean, Keenan Allen already had a ton of volume, but more volume flow to Keenan Allen, more volume flow to DeAndre Swift. And it didn't happen though because of what kind of happened on defense for the Bears. But Caleb's going to improve. The Bears are going to improve. They're not going to score defensive touchdowns every week. And then you add on the Rome Odunze injury. He's currently week to week with a knee injury. That's just going to open up so much more for Keenan Allen because that was the major concern for Keenan Allen. So coming off a bad game, he would be someone that like, he's not going to cost you wide receiver 1 value. I value him as a really strong flex play. I've not done, like basically after I create this video, I'm going to go in and do the week 2 rankings, but I can promise you he's going to rate out pretty darn well not having a Odunze. And then with the volume that we saw, in week 1, he's going to have not a significant like per play upside, but if he's going to get all of this volume, that's a lot of upside in fantasy, especially for those of you in full PPR leagues. And then again, Swift, the total volume wasn't there, but he had a huge share of the running back expected points on the Bears. That's valuable for when they score more fantasy points when the offense is better overall. Chris Olave dropped a dud and they scored 47 points. So it's just absolutely crazy. You'd think, look at that stat line, you're like, oh my goodness, did he have like $150 and 3 touchdowns? No, he didn't do absolutely anything. We went into this offseason, kind of talking about this offense, being like, listen, they were super predictable. They were super uncreative last season. The hope was that bringing in Clint Kubiak would change things. They would run more pre-snap motion. What do? In week 1? They lead the league with 88% of their plays having pre-snap motion, and they drop 47 points. Are they going to do that every week? Absolutely not. But Chris Olave is not going to also have 2 receptions for 11 yards every week. This game was just over so early that the Saints didn't really need to throw the ball, didn't really need to be aggressive at all. Olave led the Saints in routes, but at 22. Like, he just wasn't needed in any way. They were resting their starters in the second half of this game. They just did not need to be aggressive at all. Chris Olave is a stud. There is no reason to be concerned with him. No team had fewer wide receiver expected fantasy points than the Saints because, again, they got up. They were able to lean run heavy. They utilized their tight ends a ton. I mean, no team had more expected fantasy points to tight ends than the Saints. Like, they were just able to run the ball and kind of dink and dump with their tight ends, and they just didn't need to throw the ball to wide receivers. Now, they're not going to be a team that utilizes the wide receiver a ton, but that's not needed for Olave to be good. We know they're going to rank towards the bottom of the league in that because it's basically just Shaheed and Olave. But Shaheed hits on the long touchdown. They run other touchdowns in. And when you win by 37, you don't need to throw the ball very aggressively. There will be weeks where Olave goes off. Buy low on him because, again, he was someone we were excited about for this pre-snap motion. I bring it up just because it increases efficiency of the offense, but also Olave was one of the wide receivers that really stood out in that metric. He's great when used in pre-snap motion. It didn't hit in week 1 because they did not need him. Garrett Wilson, last wide receiver. It's not very fun playing at San Fran, especially when San Fran has time to prepare. Garrett Wilson commanded 11 targets, and the Jets only ran 49 plays. Another problem with week 1. 49 plays for the Jets. Now, that's a problem with San Fran. It's why we hate playing people against them, because not only do they have an amazing defense, but their offense. I mean, everyone was watching that game, right? They can just kill the clock. As soon as they get up, they run it, play action, screen pass, and they can have these drives where they take 7, 8, 9 minutes off the clock. It's a very unique thing for San Fran that a team can be that efficient on offense, can kill the clock that much, and also have a defense that can very easily force you to go 3 and out after having the offense drive down the field for 9 minutes. And that's just going to result in a lot of games where their opponents don't have very many plays, and they have low efficiency on those plays. It was one of the worst spots they'll be in all season. It's a concern, obviously, with us that they didn't look amazing, but they at least had drives where they looked okay. And if you watch Garrett Wilson, you watch Breece Hall in that game, they still looked very good. I'm not going to say that Rodgers looked amazing, but he definitely had a number of throws where you're like, these were some of the best throws we've seen from any New York quarterback over the last 5 years. So it's like, I know he wasn't amazing, but he still showed us, even in that game where it wasn't that good, that was still one of the better games we've seen for a quarterback on this team in a very long time. And they're not going to be playing at San Fran with time to prepare for San Fran ever again this season, right? And it's just not going to be this bad of a spot. Again, 11 targets on 33 routes. That is a 36.7% target rate. That is 8th among all wide receivers in week 1. It is third behind only Cooper Kupp and Tyreek Hill among wide receivers to run at least 25 routes. More volume is coming for the offense. I mean, this was one of the lower volume games of the season, and he commanded 11 targets. Like, he's going to be averaging 10, 12, 13 targets every week with spikes from there. He's going to be great this season. You want to buy low on him. Last up are the tight ends in general. So it was a brutal week for the tight end position. Only 3 tight ends scored double-digit fantasy points. 2 of them were drafted, I would say, outside the top 14 to 15 rounds in drafts. Likely was the only tight end with at least 60 receiving yards. So don't feel bad if your tight end didn't do good. Every single tight end besides Isaiah Likely did not do very good. We also saw Njoku get hurt, Ferguson get hurt. We don't really know the full timetables for both those players, but it's seeming like about a month for each of them. I've said all summer, I want a top 7 tight end. That remains true after week 1. Trey McBride is my model's number 1 target. He scored over 6 fewer fantasy points than expected. He had a 29% target share, but only a 55% catch rate, 3 yards after the catch. He's going to be much more efficient than that moving forward. He was second by a good chunk behind Likely in expected fantasy points, so he had the second most volume and the second best volume among tight ends in week 1. Again, I can promise you better numbers are coming when he's not playing at Buffalo. We had a number of great players this week that had really difficult road matchups. That's not going to continue. McBride's going to be great this season. Mark Andrews, I mentioned him earlier in the week, but he was double teamed, triple teamed on every single play. That's something KC has done in every matchup they played against them. He's never had a good game against KC in his career. They were just basically saying, okay, we're completely taking away Andrews. There's no way you can throw the ball to Andrews this play. We're triple teaming him. If you want to dump off to Justice Hill, if you want to dump off to Isaiah Likely, sure, we don't think you can beat us doing that, so do your best. And they did that. It was a little bit annoying watching Baltimore because they weren't pushing the ball downfield at all, right? Every single play was either a dump off to Likely or Justice Hill or a screen pass to Zay Flowers. But again, terrible road matchup. Chiefs have a great defense. They play really good at home, and they also are like the team you basically never want to play. You don't want to play wide receivers against the Jets, and you don't want to play wide receivers against Kansas City. So they were able, they knew they were going to stop Zay Flowers, they're going to stop the other receivers. And if they're also selling out to stop Andrews, it's just a unique situation where Baltimore finds themselves trailing and the 2 players they want to use are taken out of the game. That's just not how Baltimore is set up. Baltimore is set up to play from ahead, to run the ball effectively, utilize play action off of that, and to utilize Mark Andrews and Zay Flowers as their top receivers. KC is just set up really well to take that away, and so it was a terrible game for Baltimore in general. And to be honest, they still almost won the game, right? They're an inch away from likely scoring that touchdown, forcing overtime, but they would have gone for it. And honestly, I think they probably would have converted the 2-point conversion. So I wouldn't worry too much about Baltimore overall, and especially Andrews. He's not going to average 0.5 yards per route run all season. He's not going to command a 7% target share in his routes. Likely he's not going to continue having a 50% target rate on his routes. That'll come crashing down. Now is a good time to capitalize on the low value of Andrews. And then we have Dalton Kincaid kind of finishing off this trio of, every tight end again underperformed, but the ones that we were kind of focusing on in drafts underperforming. It was just a really strange game for Buffalo. Josh Allen was 5 for 5 passing in the first half. You had to do like a triple take when you saw that. You're like, wait a minute. He's thrown 5 pass attempts in the first half. What is happening over there? Ends the game 18 of 23. He only had 2 games with fewer than that attempts last season. I think it was like 15 and 21. So most games last season, even taking into account in the second half of the year, they went more run heavy. They were still throwing the ball more than 23 times per game. And again, it's the volume thing. If we look at the lowest volume offense in the NFL last season, it was the Titans. Lowest volume passing offense at just over 29 pass attempts per game. Buffalo threw the ball 23 times, so that's going up. If we look overall, there were 16 teams in the NFL in week 1 that threw the ball less than Tennessee did last season. 16 teams. That is absolutely insane. The Bengals, Bears, 49ers, Jets, Chiefs, Lions, Jaguars, Falcons, Seahawks, Patriots, Vikings, Commanders, Saints, Bills, Steelers, Jaguars, and Colts. They all threw the ball fewer than 29 times, which would have ranked last among all teams in the NFL last season. So I'm not saying that like, you got a bunch of players on these teams, they're all going off. That's not the case, but we should be expecting a lot more passing volume in future weeks. 2 players I'd be okay selling high on, and typically sell high for me isn't like, oh, this person's playing really well, gotta dump him for nothing, right? If a person's playing well, you can ride out the hot streak, or you can sell them if someone is willing to pay an elevated price tag for them. So whenever we talk about these sell highs, they're gonna be players who are performing right now. You don't need to just dump them if you have them. We're gonna talk about Jayden Reed. I have him in 2 of my 3 leagues, right? I'm not going out there and sending a million trade offers for Jayden Reed just hoping someone takes him for nothing. But if someone looks at it and is like, oh, I got to get Jayden Reed on my team, I got to get Isaiah Likely on my team, they are 2 players I'm perfectly willing to part with because they did significantly overperform your expectation in week 1. I already kind of went over the take for Likely, but again, it was the dream outcome for him. KC sold out to stop Mark Andrews, and Lamar had to throw the ball 41 times. That combination is going to happen, what? Maybe once, maybe 2 more times all season. And we know from the offseason research that I did this season, the best thing you can possibly do at the tight end position is trade high. No matter what, if a player is a breakout, if a player is a bust, the best thing any team did with that player, besides Sam Laporta last season, Laporta, it was kind of neutral, is trade them away. If you have a tight end that starts going off, sell high. You're going to get more value than they're going to return to you over the course of the season. Tight end is very volatile. If you can capitalize on elevated price tag, you should do it. And then with Jayden Reed, again, I don't want to sound like I don't like him. I have him in my leagues. I want him to play well, but he scored 31.1 half PPR points on 6 targets and 1 rush attempt. Like, he ranks outside the top 20 wide receivers in expected fantasy points. He scored 22.7 more fantasy points than the volume he received would suggest he'd have on average. He's a great player on a great offense, but he was still tied with Christian Watson for 3rd in routes on his own team. 84 players currently have a higher target percentage than him. Again, not dumping him for nothing, but if someone goes out there and like, hey, I'm going to offer you wide receiver 2 value, or hey, you give me Jayden Reed plus another player, and I'll give you a Garrett Wilson. I will give you, some of these stud wide receivers that underperformed in week 1. Yes, I would absolutely be willing to do that. At quarterback, had to mention it. There's nothing. The model split on a few names. I think you should sell high on Baker, buy low on CJ Stroud, but realistically, quarterback trades are so difficult to do, and Baker's a streaming option. I don't think anyone out there actually thinks he's going to produce like that every week. It's just that the Commanders have a terrible defense. So if you can sell high on Baker, do it. If you can buy super low on CJ Stroud, do it. For the most part, quarterback trades very difficult to do unless someone's underperforming for like a month straight. So that is it for this week's trade video. Again, I have a lot more options on the website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com, and I really recommend checking out the positional reports. I spent a lot of time on those this offseason, and especially as we work our way through the season, it's going to be a great resource for understanding who the most valuable players are at each position, and then who the model thinks you should be trading for and away. If you signed up for Underdog using promo code FA and make a minimum $10 deposit, you have access to that. So if you did that over the summer, you have access to that, and you have access to the in-season rankings. And if you want to get access, again, go to Underdog, sign up with promo code FFA, minimum $10 deposit. Following morning, I'll email you access to the site. So that'll do it for this week. Leave a like if you watched this far, subscribe if you are new here, and thanks for watching.